saw a little something starting in Rochester. He would call me when I first got started, and he would inspire me and say, "What you got going there is fantastic. Keep it going. Keep it going." And then he started coming out and helping us out with our presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, he makes absolutely nothing to make a 6-hour trip from Johnstown, New York, to come here and help us. But this is probably about the fourth or fifth time he's come out here. Okay, he's just an amazing human being. Him and his wife Trish, they got a great family. You know, I could go on and on about the award, Pure Energy Award, Crystal Sphere Award, on the Leadership Council. He's been on multiple 5-star trips. And the thing that's really, really neat is he's only been doing this 7 years, and him and his wife just went down to Dallas to get fitted for their $1 million yellow jackets. He just retired from the Johnstown Fire Department a week ago, so now every day is a Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a huge Rochester standing welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. I mean, I come out here, Walt and Dave, I met them, like you said, about 5.5 years ago, and we just became good friends. I love those guys, and I told Walt, I promise I'll be up, and it took a little longer than we had planned, but here I am, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to start off simply by saying that I'm just a regular blue-collar worker that was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I had no experience in this industry, and I'm gonna share my whole story with you. I know that it's already gone a little long, but I think it's important. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York, Johnstown, New York, St. Johnsville area, and it's a very high poverty level. If you look in New York State, we have one of the highest poverty levels, highest tax per thousand, highest welfare. I mean, you name it, our area's got it when it comes to that. And I'm not saying that to be wise. I'm saying that because when I started this business in 2009, if you don't know, it cost more money to start. Growing up, my dad was a truck driver. He told me and my 3 brothers, whatever you do, don't become truck drivers. Well, all 4 of us became truck drivers. And I always say, and I say this, but I believe that most people, they do what they know, and that's what we saw my dad doing. I didn't go to college. I was in the military. I got out, and I met a lot of New York City firemen. I was in the Coast Guard down in New York City, and there was a lot of New York City firemen that were reservists for the life insurance policy. That's why they did it. So I got to meet a lot of them, and I wanted to become a fireman. And that became a reality in 1996. But before I get into that, I watched my parents their whole life work hard, and, they had the wrong vehicle. They lived paycheck to paycheck, and they never had a savings account. And I told my wife I never wanted to end up like they did. Unfortunately, that happened to me, but not because I had the wrong vehicle. It's just some bad things happened. So in 1996, I became a firefighter, and it was one of the best days of my life. 7 years into my career, my wife was pregnant with our second son, and I was roofing on the side, and I told her I wasn't feeling good, and as soon as the baby was born, I was going to go to a doctor and get checked out. My son was born on October 12th of 2002. On October 16th, at 31 years old, I was diagnosed with an aortic dissection. And if you don't know what that is, the main artery in my heart was ripping from the inside and turns into an aneurysm, and if it bursts, you die instantly. As a matter of fact, most people do not live from that. If you know who John Ritter is, that's what he died from, the actor. Needless to say, they took me out of work, and they told me my career as a firefighter was over. And if you tell a firefighter that, you might as well rip their heart out, because we love the job so much. You're not really doing it for the money, although the money is nice. So there I was out of work at 31 years old. I had no plan B. I had nothing in place. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had surgery. I was on the table for 12 hours. They replaced my whole aorta synthetic. I like to say it's made of Dacron. I tell everybody I always have a warm heart. But I was out of work for a year, and then during that year I learned 2 very hard lessons that I think most people today take for granted. The first one was I took for granted that I was getting up every day and I was going to be healthy and have a job for that matter. And the other was what many people do today. I bought things. I bought a truck, jet skis, snowmobiles, ATVs. I had all the toys, but it wasn't because I was buying them outright. It was because I could afford the payment. And at a young age, you don't think you're going to go out of work with an illness. So, I took for granted, or let me say I was living beyond my means was the other thing that I took for granted. And that was a real eye-opener. I can sit back here and say, why me? Why did that happen? But I'm very grateful that all that happened at a young age because it changed my whole outlook on life. So after a year, we're deep in debt. They let me go back to the fire department. Just to make it clear, we're a small fire department. We're a 24-man department. If you can't do everything, you can't be there. So I was very fortunate to come back. And unfortunately, I was so deep in debt, I had to get another part-time job. So I went back into what I knew, truck driving. That's what I was doing for the next 3 years. In the summer of '06, my wife was working. I got off shift from the firehouse, and I was supposed to spend the day with my 2 sons. Well, my buddy that I used to roof with called me up, and he said, listen, I got a real easy roof job. I can't get anybody to help me. Will you help me out? I said, no way. I'm not interested. My roofing career was over after the aneurysm. And he goes, I'll pay you $30 an hour under the table. I said, I'll be there. My wife didn't know any of this was going on. I was on the roof an hour. I fell off head first, 10 feet. I only broke my wrist. I was out of work again. I joked that I would have broke my neck if I had one. But anyways, I was out of work for 4 months. I ended up deeper in debt. My wife actually wanted to kill me. I get back to the firehouse. I go back to truck driving, and I just succumbed to the idea that this is how life was going to be. I can remember many nights driving tractor trailer up out of Binghamton or wherever on 88, thinking to myself, there's got to be something better than what I'm doing here to survive. And that's what I was doing, working at the firehouse, driving truck, and that I was like a hamster in the cage spinning the wheel. I was getting nowhere financially, even though I was working a lot of hours. So 3 years go by, January of '09. We had a big snowstorm, and I got off shift in the morning, and my crew was going snowmobiling. It sounded like a good idea, so I decided to go, and about 10:30 at night, I hit a tree at over 50 miles an hour, and I was out of work again. If you need a ride home, see me after the presentation. There I was, laid up on my couch. I was out of work for 4 months, but about 3 weeks in, I get a phone call from my union president at the fire department. He says he's at a union meeting in Albany, New York, and there were some firefighters talking about this energy company. Do you want to go take a look at it? I thought I was going to look at a job offer, to be honest with you. So we went to the presentation. It was at a restaurant, and it actually was Ray Monty and another gentleman by the name of Rob Marcioni were doing the presentation. And I sat through everything you just saw. And if you're a guest here and you're a little skeptical of what you saw, congratulations, you're normal. I mean, it looks too good to be true. I'll be the first one to admit it. And I felt that way about it. After the presentation, my buddy wanted to leave. And I said, no, I'm going over to talk to this guy. I went over to talk to Rob Marcioni because he stood up in front of the room and said he's an attorney for the state of New York. Now, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, if this guy's lying, I know where he works. But I asked him the questions I had. He answered them. When we were done, he basically said, listen, my associates and I spent about 3 weeks researching this company. There's no holes in it. If you like what you see, you should hit the ground running. And that was good enough for me. I went home. I was excited about it. I tried to explain it to my wife. That was my first big mistake in Ambit. She heard it was an investment to get started, and she said, no way, you're not doing it. And it wasn't because there's an investment. She understands you got to spend money to make money, but we had no money. And I laid in bed that night. I couldn't sleep, wondering if this was real. And I actually started thinking about I was right where I always said I didn't want to be, where my parents were, living paycheck to paycheck with no savings account, and decided that I'd wasted that kind of money on a weekend before. I'm going for it, and my first why in Ambit Energy was to make my investment back before my wife got our credit card statement. I did that. I made about I actually made $700 my first 2 weeks in the business, and I never looked back. My second year in Ambit Energy, 2010, I actually surpassed my firefighting income and it's been a six-figure income ever since, which if you would have told me that, I would have never believed it, but I'm not doing anything special. I'm just doing this business, just as Dave talked about. And, you know, I do want to mention this before I forget. I think Laura, that's the first time I ever seen her present, but I think that was one of the best first parts of the presentation I've ever seen. So, good job. So, you know, it's been just over 7 years since I started my business, and looking back, you know, I have no regrets whatsoever. It's been a tremendous journey so far. It's far exceeded anything I ever imagined. My wife, who told me no, is, I like to say, she's been retired for 2 years already. As Dave said, last Monday I walked out of the firehouse for the last time. That's the first time I had to say that. But, you know, it's been amazing. And what I think is important to share with all of you is that in 7 years working this business on my days off, my residual income is more than 8 times greater than what my pension's going to be when I start receiving it. And as Dave said, we flew down to Texas 2 weeks ago to get fitted for our yellow jacket, and that none of this is set in yet, honestly, but it's been amazing. I'm very grateful. And so if you're a guest here, there's a lot of questions I'm sure you have. Do what I did before you leave. Dave said the same thing. Don't walk out that door tonight without getting your questions answered, because it'd be a big mistake. I know for a fact, if I walked out the door, I probably wouldn't have started this business. So it was one of the best decisions I ever made. You know, why is Ambit working for so many people? You know, there's a lot of great product-based businesses out there. But at the end of the day, you're asking people to buy something that's, you know, not always what they're used to. It's out of the norm, buying a product a different way than going to a grocery store. 2 things that I think are unique about Ambit Energy. Number one, we're saving people money on a service that they can't live without. We all know that. But I think as important is we're not changing the customer's buying habits. They're still getting their bill the same way they always have. If their power goes out, they still call Rochester Gas and Electric or National Grid, whatever power company they're with. So that's very important. And that's how you can build that residual income that Dave talked about. You know, when I met Ray Monty 7 years ago, his residual income was $8,000 a month. I remember saying to myself, if I ever hit half of that, I'd be all set. And I did that, actually surpassed that in less than 22 months. But even more important than that is his residual income now is over $100,000 a month. And I can tell you, as Dave said, he's one of the hardest working people in Ambit Energy, but he's not doing anything different than anyone else that is building this business. He's just doing more of it. So it's really happening. So that's the first thing is that we're not changing people's buying habits. The power of part-time. You know, I'm going to have to change my story now, but, you know, it used to be fun telling people that I'm building this business part-time. You know, there is another time that I went out of work that I'll share with you guys. And if you pay attention, 2003, 2006, 2012, 2015, I was on eggshells. But in 2012, I was working a fire at a leather mill, and I broke my ribs. And I was out of work again for 4 months. But I was already in Ambit, and I joke, but it's true. During that time frame, when I was actually building this business full-time for 4 months, it's the most money in a 4-month span that I ever made. So that's another reason I'm looking forward to doing this full-time. But it is a part-time business. You know, this business was designed, as you heard tonight, for people to help pay their mortgage or maybe cover their insurance, or nowadays a big one is health insurance. What if Ambit was just sending you enough money to cover your health insurance costs? I mean, that's a big deal these days. So it is a part-time business. It was not meant to be full-time, but because it is so ground floor, there's many people that are surpassing an income that they never imagined and going full-time with it. The compensation plan, the only other thing I'll add that, you know, Dave did a phenomenal job going over it, is the only other thing is that this is servant leadership. It is designed for all the leaders in this room, all the people that you saw stand up, it's designed for them to help a new person coming in be successful. And that is very important as well. It's not like thanks for your investment and we pat you on the back and tell you good luck out there. It doesn't work like that. We're not your boss. We're not telling you what to do. We're helping you to be successful, and that's why this works so well. And the timing couldn't be better. The one thing that I'll point out that I think everybody should pay attention to is all the top income earners in this company are right now in the summer working harder than they've ever worked. So you got to ask yourself why. Here, Ambit Energy turns 10 years old this year. So, that to me legitimizes that the company has made it. 10 years, they say, if a company makes it 10 years, they're going to last. Well, I had no doubt that Ambit would last. We hit $1 billion. I like to say we're the fastest growing company in U.S. history to $1 billion. Although, there's Facebook, Groupon, companies that hit it in just over 2 or 3 years. Ambit Energy hit it in less than 7 years, but we were only in parts of 9 states. So to me, that's more impressive, and that's my own story, and I'm sticking to it. But the timing couldn't be better. If you're a brand new person, A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, featured on Successful Home Magazine multiple years in a row. How about we'll take network marketing companies? You have Amway, Avon, Mary Kay. We've all heard of these companies. Do you know if you took away their international revenue right now, the money they make outside of the USA, Ambit Energy would be the #1 network marketing company in the United States. Wow. We make more revenue in 16 states in the District of Columbia than these companies that have been around on average 45, 50 years. And if you're a guest here, you have an opportunity to partner with this company. So the timing could not be better. We have a proven system. This is a very simple system. Honestly, you want to know one of the hardest parts about Ambit? Is people want to dazzle others, with all the knowledge they know about the company. But it's a simple business. One of the stories I heard a long time ago, and I think it's funny, is you could teach a dog to do this business by just strapping a DVD to the dog's back. You send them into a room full of people, and after they play the DVD, you train the dog to bark with excitement, and that's what we're doing. I didn't make that story up. I think it came from Ronnie Kirkland. But it's a great story, and it's true though. So we have a proven system. If you're willing to follow it, you too can be standing in front of this room and eventually making $1 million yourself. It's exciting. Trust me, I had no experience, and I was one of the biggest skeptics on the planet. I had been prospected for other network marketing companies, and I was the guy that was negative about it. I believe that this is a better way, and the bottom line is today, with the way the economy is, you cannot get by anymore with just one stream of income. And as you heard, this makes total sense. I'm going to tell you a couple stories, and then I'll close this thing out. The guy that invited me to the presentation that I went to 7 years ago, I worked with him at the firehouse. Well, on the way home, his name is Rich. I said, Rich, what do you think about this? He goes, I've seen these things before, they don't work. I said, well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get started. Why don't you sign up and I'll sign up under you? And he said, no. So Rich is not going to be rich because of Ambit. But I did sign up under the guy that invited him, who I did not know. And just like any new person, I started calling him, asking him questions. I wanted to know what I needed to do. And he more or less told me, don't call me anymore. That's what my sponsor told me. Now, my sponsor makes probably over $100,000 a year just in residual income, and he hasn't even sent me a Christmas card. But that's one story I thought that I'd make. And where I'm going with these stories is you're one conversation away from somebody who could change your life forever. I hope you don't mind if I do this, but how many people in this room are on Dave and Walt's team, by a show of hands, or Rob Butter, or Dave Wilkerson? A good decent number in here, all right? Does anybody know who Cherie Dusler is? Because you're all on her team. Cherie Dusler is my sister-in-law. When I was a regional consultant, I was having a NASCAR party at my house, and I just promoted the regional consultant. I was all fired up, and I pulled in the driveway. I forgot all about the party, and all my friends are in the, their vehicles are in the driveway. I'm like, oh no, and I sit in my truck for a minute. I'm like, heck with it, no guts, no glory. I walked into the house. I go, you guys have to watch this DVD before the race comes on. But they watched it, and actually 3 people joined as consultants that day. One of them was my sister-in-law, my wife's sister, and she's been in a few network marketing companies where she gets excited for a little while and then she kind of fades away. Well, she did the same thing in this business, but the difference was is she found one motivated person that went out and built this business, and because of that conversation, she works for a medical facility. I think she makes about $30,000 a year. She shows up every week to her job loyally and does her job. She hasn't showed up in Ambit in like 6 years. But Ambit sends her about $48,000 a year in residual income. That wasn't a bad conversation for her, right? There's so many stories I can go on and on all night. But at the end of the day, I was talking to some people earlier. If you want to be successful in this business, in my opinion, it's not for us to decide for anybody whether they will or they won't do this. I have a guy on my team down in New Jersey who happens to be under my sister-in-law as well. He's a very successful orthopedic spine surgeon. Their team exploded down there. He didn't do this for the money. He did this because he understood energy deregulation is going to be a big deal. And most people who are already successful are looking for other streams of income. And doctors are a great prospect because, with the way things are going now, whether it's because of Obamacare or whatever it is, that they are not making the money they used to make. And doctors buy rental properties for the tax deductions. Don't you think it's a better option to share this with a doctor when they can just spend $100 and get more write-offs than owning a rental property without the headaches? Think about it. What I'm saying is it's not for us to decide who will or who won't do this. It's our job to get it in front of as many people as we can and try and help as many people as we can, because it is the greatest opportunity I believe we'll ever see in our lifetime. All right, so that being said, if you're a guest here tonight, you're generally either a A, B, or a C. A C, you don't see it, it's not for you, and that's okay. We're not trying to convince people to do this. It's too big to be playing games. But whoever did invite you here, give them the courtesy of trying the service. They thought of you as somebody who might want to make some additional income. Do them a favor and try the service. It's not going to cost you anything. It's guaranteed to save you money, and nothing will change for you other than you're paying a little less for the energy you already use. So that's a C person, and that's okay. A B person is like me. I was excited about it, but I had my doubts. Do what I did. You saw all the leaders in this room tonight stand up, and get recognized. And maybe there's somebody in this room who does the same thing you do. Go over and get your questions answered before you leave here tonight, because most people who don't get their questions answered, they walk out the door and they doubt themselves right out of it. Guys, your risk is $100. Ambit Energy does not want your money. Dave went through the compensation plan. They want loyal customers. Those customers are not loyal to Ambit, they're loyal to you. If another company knocks on my mother's door, she doesn't say, no, I'm with Ambit Energy. She says, no, I'm with my son. She's not leaving. She's loyal to me. I gathered 30 customers in my first week 7 years ago, and they're all still with me. 2 of them moved, and they called me up and asked me to sign them back up. So they're not leaving. They will never leave. They're loyal to me. They're happy with Ambit service, and that's why this works so well. So that's a B person. Don't leave here without getting your questions answered. And if you're an A person, raise your hand if you're ready to get started right now. If you're an A person, there's usually some A people in the room. Whoever invited you, they can help you get started tonight. This is a great presentation. If you're all from this area and you're plugging into this meeting every week, it's one of the best presentations I've seen in a long time. And I travel all over the place. I'm actually driving home tonight, gonna get some sleep, and then I'm getting up and I'm driving to Cape Cod for the rest of the week to work with my team out there. But, I love this business. This is not work to me. I enjoy every second of it. And anybody in this room needs help from me, feel free to get my number from somebody in the room. But I appreciate everybody listening to my story. I'm excited about where this company's going. If you like what you see, trust me, you're in the right place at the right time. Thank you.